So welcome everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for November 17th, 2020, though in 2020 nothing seems regular. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place throughout the Staminas territory, and we are thankful to be here. We will call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda, but Ms. Smith, I know we have some amendments. One is to remove item 9.1. As there was an incorrect report included in the submission that needs to be corrected, and that will come back to council hopefully in the near future. I believe we have a new item. And where did we want to put that?
Your worship, I would suggest putting the new item under new business, so it would be 13.1.
Okay.
The title is.
Go ahead.
The title is COVID-19 Parks, Recreation and Culture Program Rate Adjustment.
Okay, thank you. And when we get to that item, and when I try and barrel right by it because it's not on my published agenda, I'm sure you'll stop me. Okay, so with that, we will get underway. The next item on our, I need to get a motion to approve the agenda as amended. That's the removal of 9.1, the addition of 13.1, moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Councillor Stevens, I would remark that Councillor Jacobson is now Deputy Mayor. But you can keep that up there if it makes you feel good. All right, so the first item on our agenda is the minutes of the regular council meeting of November 3rd, 2020. If there's no errors or omissions, a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion on those? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to proclamations. And the proclamation for today is that I declare, November 20th as National Child Day. I'm having technical issues with my agenda. November 20th as National Child Day in the town of Ladysmith. And the proclamation reads, whereas children and youth are present and future citizens, and whereas Canada has designated November 20th as National Child Day to commemorate the adoption of the UN Declaration of Rights of the Child in 1959 and the adoption of the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child in 1991, and a World Fit for Children arising from the UN Special Session on Children in 2002. And whereas Canada has pledged the implementation of children's and youth's rights, including rights to protection, rights to be provided services, rights to meaningful participation in society and community life, the right to enjoy their childhood freely and safe from those who would harm them, and furthermore recognizes the important role of the family in bringing up children, I therefore proclaim November 20th, 2020 as National Child Day in the town of Ladysmith. That takes us to our budget workshop, and I believe Ms. Anderson is going to walk us through a Public Works budget presentation, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Just the water and sewer and capital.
Water, sewer, capital, not just Public Works, more specific to the utilities. Ms. Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a report there. It has a few resolutions in it, but if council allows me, I'm just going to walk through the presentation and then maybe we can revisit the report and discuss the motions at that time. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully, there we go. This is our third workshop that we've been discussing the 2021 budget. So tonight we are going to review some of the stuff that has been discussed at prior meetings. I'm looking for some direction to prepare some amendment bylaws, and then we're going to talk about the capital projects and then what comes next. So our last meeting, we went through the water and sewer rates. So there was a 3% increase to the water rates, and that's to each of the steps. So essentially a $3.66 for a quarter for a single family dwelling that's using 9 cubic meters or 90 cubic meters. That's essentially 1 cubic meter a day. And I'm proposing no changes to the water parcel tax, and not looking at any changes to sewer rates at all or the sewer parcel tax. So this will be the resolution that will be coming up in the staff report to be discussed later on, but that kind of closes off the water and sewer utilities. Now I'm going to go on to the capital projects. So included in the agenda were the listing of all the capital projects and a little bit of descriptions and what the risk is, what's the priority of each of the projects. I'm going to ask the other directors to step in if there's any questions specifically on each of the projects. But the presentation basically starts with the facility maintenance projects. So here they are listed. Again, if there's any questions of council, the directors can answer all those questions. But if the attachment in the council agenda included where all the funding was going to be coming for each of these projects. Most of the stuff is coming from taxation or reserves. You can see here that a lot of the facility maintenance projects there have some of them are critical. They are required high priority. Some of them can be deferred, but they are on the list for either asset management replacement or for items that really need to be addressed in the medium future, and then other items that are actually optional. So with no questions on that one, I'm going to move on to the recreation ones. Some more ones there on. These are just be part of the items that support our programs that we do at FGCC.
Excuse me, Aaron. There had a question on the museum siding and gutters. How do you want us to address that? Because can you see us on screen, or do we have to go with audio?
I thought we might. Sorry, if I may, I thought that we were going to wait till the end, and that way the other directors could pop in to answer specific project questions.
Good enough.
Okay, I'll come to you first, Rob, when we get through the presentation on that project.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so we just talked about these ones here for recreation. Now we have some parks and playground ones. Some of these are high risk and critical ones that we request that they are done in 2021. And then some of the water projects. So we've discussed some of these at a previous meeting, or actually have brought them up. You notice there's a few here that have an asterisk on the side, like these ones here. That's requiring early budget approval. Why I draw your attention to that is I'm going to be asking at a future meeting that we can move ahead on these projects. And these projects would then be committed, the funds would be committed prior to actually doing the formal bylaw, which isn't required to be approved until later in May. So this is why I'm just would like to draw your attention to these projects, as once we get approval on them, there really is no going back because the funds will be committed on those ones. And this is permitted in the financial plan because we do adopt a 5-year financial plan. So right now we are in year 2020 is the first year, but once we move into 2021, we are in the second year of the adopted financial plan. And then moving on to sewer and compost. Again, there's a few projects here that require early budget approval. And again, these were presented at the last meeting. Some storm projects here, some of the large dollar value ones. I will be discussing where the funding is coming from for some of these just a little bit further on into the presentation. Roads and sidewalks, we have some other projects here. These ones here, the Russell Road ones, these are DCC projects. And we're not just building half a road. That is just the town's responsibility for the other half of it that the developer puts in. Cemetery, fence and gate, that's one that has come up for a few years. And fire protection, we have a few projects here. And then the waterfront ones. So we've just included the allotment of the waterfront projects for the that were approved in the waterfront area plan. They match what was the council resolution to put that implementation into place. Okay, so if there's any questions, how about if council wishes, we can take a pause here, because I'm going to go through where all the projects come from in their for any of the reserve funding, not the taxation funding for these ones. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm just going to try and get a pop out here so I can see all of council. Oh, there we go, I think. Yep. Sorry, I'll go to Rob, Councillor Johnson first.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. On the one in our agenda, it shows museum siding, roof and gunning, $70,000 out of taxation, but you've got under determine if building is needed long-term. And you show it medium risk. $70,000 represents 1% increase in property taxes. Do we really need to do this?
I'd put that through to staff. Go ahead, Mr. Barfoot.
Thank you. Through the chair, the museum has been experiencing some issues with water ingress in their basement. We've had an inspection done to the roof, and there is some critical rot that has been found, and the gutters are having some issues. It is a critical element if the museum is to be sustainable as a space to store artifacts in the basement and a suitable safe space to have volunteers work. It is an item that does need to be addressed.
Follow up?
Yeah, because on the paper that we have, it shows as a minimum risk, and you're showing it as critical. So is it critical or medium?
It's medium risk, but it's a critical need. So there's two matrices that kind of cross over with those, Rob. So the medium risk means that it's not like life or limb risk, but that it is critical to the ongoing operations. I don't know if staff want to provide more insight to the medium risk versus priority, sort of where those lines intersect.
No, you basically got that, Your Worship, that the risk, the priority is that it needs to be done very quickly, but the risk is, like you say, to life and limb or to other assets being destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So what is our long-term goal in regards to that building?
I don't know if anyone can answer that right now. It's just because I think that ideally there's, future better uses for that assembled properties, but in the medium term, we haven't determined a new location for the museum. So therefore, as long as we have the expectation that a museum will continue to operate, that some improvements do need to be made to the building to allow that to continue. I would put it through to staff if you have a better explanation.
Through the chair, I think that is a correct assumption on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up question, because the amount of $70,000. No, yeah, $70,000 to re-roof a building. That's very simple building. I'm amazed that it's not half that price.
So I put that through to staff, but they already remarked it's not just re-roofing the building, that there's rot in the building, that there's issues with the gutters and there's other water ingress. But I think it also said there's a replaced gutter system and extension roof, wood siding, cement cladding replacement if building is to be retained. So it's not just a roof. It's an envelope project, it looks like, to prevent water ingress, but I would put that through again to staff.
You are through the chair, you are correct. It includes the wood siding and some additional foundational work, including the roof. And that's not just replacing the roof, it's some of the wood that goes underneath and the base that attaches the gutters to.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I accept that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Or
yeah, I just want to remind council too that these projects are brought forward under the allocation for capital. So if we decide not to go ahead with a specific project, typically staff will bring forward another project in their priority list to maintain the contributions to capital that we would usually make, unless staff has different direction on that. But my understanding in previous years has been these are the highest priority projects under our standard capital allocation for the year.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, and go ahead with a follow-up, Councillor Johnson.
Okay, another one was paint wood cladding at the Resource Center building, $24,000 of taxation and low risk. And not painting the siding will result in the building siding deteriorating faster. But it's it's only what, 8 years old? And the building itself shouldn't deteriorate if it goes another year without painting, I would think.
Again, through to staff, just remarking that this is the priority that staff see based on their maintenance plans, but I would put that through to Mr. Barfoot again.
Through the chair, it is a wood-sided building, and in order to protect that asset, you would want to have a regular maintenance of painting. It is seen as an optional priority on the list, but it is something that in order to maintain our buildings, we'll want to protect that envelope.
So that building is newer than the Boys and Girls Club, which has the same paint on it. Are we going to look at painting the Boys and Girls Club this year also?
Through the chair, the Boys and Girls Club building will be going under some renovation with the addition of 12 child care spaces. It'll be during that time we'll be looking at painting the siding and combining the two projects.
Okay, and another one, if I may.
I'll give you one more before I go to my speakers list, and then I can always come back to you.
Sure. You can go to others first. I'll hang on.
I think I had Councillor Stevens next. Everybody's in tiny windows, so if you want to ask about a specific project, please put up your hand. I think I have Councillor Stevens next, though.
Thank you. I don't know whether you can hear the saxophone player downstairs, but so I also had a question about the museum siding and gutters, and the key sentence for me in that that section is determine if the building is needed long term. That it is a taxation line. Until we have that determination, I would rather see the next item on the list of asset management come up, and I don't know how we get around parsing that out from the other numbers, but it is something I'm really uncomfortable with without knowing what, you know, is it a 2-year, 1 year, 5-year horizon for that asset, or do we do it right up? But without knowing that, it's really tough for me to look at that amount under taxation in this year. The 632nd Avenue, I have no problem because it's a new building, getting on top of that in terms of the staining of the wood, because I know it's just going to be proportionally more next year. And because it's essentially a brand new asset, I think keep it in the best shape, and the cost today is not going to go down in the future. So I think it's good value to do that. The other question I have is around on page 20 of the paper agenda is the roof on the Public Works building, and again that comes into mind of it, how critical is that at that point in time? At this point in time, I should say.
Again, I'll put that through to staff on the Public Works building.
Through the chair, we just recently had an inspection done. It was determined that roof has anywhere between 1 year to 3 years before we'll be seeing some major need for repairs on that building or on that roof.
Okay.
Follow up?
It's just going back in the public record in August of 2018, we talked about a possible expansion of Public Works and to accommodate bylaw inspection and development services. And I just wondered if, again, this is something, if we could put it off, then, you know, we might be doing this work and then doing work on top of it. And so if it's a 1 to 3 year, and it's labeled as medium risk and medium priority, is it something to consider? I just put it out there for council to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I see Councillor Patterson's hand in my tiny windows. Councillor Patterson.
You did see it in your tiny window. Just a couple of comments in regard to Councillor Stevens. We don't know what we're going to be doing with the museum, and I don't believe we're going to be knowing in a couple of years what we're going to be doing with the museum. So to me, it's to protect those assets that belong to the town that will never be replaced. I believe that we should go forward with that project, as well as the roof on Public Works. In a previous report, the addition to that building to possibly accommodate those other departments is $1 million. And I do not see us spending $1 million for the next few years. And again, so this might be a stopgap measure, but we have a lot of valuable equipment and records in that building, and I wouldn't want to see a leak like we had at City Hall. So both of those are to me are quite necessary. Question I have is on page 21, the aerobics studio floor refinish. And it's only $11,000, but with COVID, are we getting the number of people using it, or is it the usage down where that one could be put off for a year?
Through the chair, the aerobic studio currently isn't being utilized for public use. It is a highly used meeting space due to its able to space out. The floor is in decent condition and will need to be replaced at one point, but it is something that possibly we can look at doing in the future.
I've got a couple others, but I'll let that rest for other people.
Okay, anyone else want to take a crack at capital projects? Okay, I'll go back to Councilor John. Pardon me?
I say, I don't know if you saw me or not.
I was just about to say I'll go back to Councilor Johnson, and then I think Councilor Stevens, and then Patterson again.
Okay, thank you. The thing that I'm trying to do is reduce the amount that we're taking out of taxation in the hope of trying to minimize tax increases. And on page 41 is the command vehicle one, the fire chief's truck. It's a 2007, but I am making what I believe a reasonable assumption. There's not a lot of miles on that, and cars that are built in the 2000 trucks have a long period of productivity up to 400,000 kilometers. So I'm just wondering, can we go another year by not replacing this vehicle and save the taxpayers that 1%?
So again, I'm just going to remind you, Councillor Johnson, that these are projects brought forth based on the policy amount that council sets aside for capital projects. The way we reduce a budget is not to remove projects, but actually to lower the capital contribution, which we discussed briefly, but we'll be coming back to council in terms of overall direction to staff. But again, I can put that through to staff and they can talk about the necessity of the fire command vehicle. But again, to reduce taxation, which we've already given some direction to staff, isn't by picking off capital projects that we believe are the lower priorities, but that staff will do that based on our policy direction around the taxation and the capital allocations. But go through to staff based on the need for the fire command vehicle.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a request from the fire chief. It is a priority for his department. So I will rest with it that this is an item that is required for the fire department. I just would like to take the opportunity to direct Councillor Johnson back to the staff report where it does talk about the 10% of the prior year's municipal tax levy is transferred to the general tax for general capital projects. So that is what I believe that the mayor is also talking about. We have X amount of money that we are utilizing. This is about $740,000 of taxation money. And if there is a project that council is asking for us to remove, additional project will be popping in to take its place. I'm sorry, I believe that the fire chief is around. So if he would like to answer that question regarding the fire truck.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, your worship, the Chiefs Truck Command 1 vehicle has been reviewed by our mechanic next door, and he suggested that it is nearing end of life. 2007 is not an overly old vehicle, but when it is driven hard typically. So the maintenance on it is climbing up, and it does get beat, to be honest.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Johnson.
Well, I'm trying to find ways, hopefully we can reduce the taxation burden to our group, and anything that can be pushed back a year. And as they say, we have to necessarily move that extra money up, or can we save it to reduce the taxation? Because that's the name of the game at this point in time with people suffering from COVID.
So I'm going to hope that third time's the charm here, but we've already explained that policy direction from staff or to staff from council is how we reduce taxation. We've already given them some indication of our desire to lower the taxation requisition, and that will be coming forward to council with options at a future meeting. Ms. Anderson, can you maybe let us know when that discussion will come back at the policy level for council?
Yes, Your Worship. The December 1st meeting is when some of those discussions will be presented for council to vote on. But if there are indications that council is not supporting the 10% policy, then it would be helpful to then direct staff so we can come back with different projects if that is something that's on the table at this point in time.
Thank you. I would prefer that we actually let staff bring the report forward. We're going to be doing that in the first part of December. We can make the policy changes then that will get the taxation amounts that we're looking for, and staff can make the adjustments to the budget to support that policy direction subsequently. But I will go back to you one more time, Councillor Johnson, and then hopefully back to the speakers list.
No, I accept that. You can carry on. Everything's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, did you have more that you said you wanted to bring up? No. Councillor Stevens, did I miss anything from you? Any others that I missed? I'm peering into the tiny windows so you can all see my Movember disgust or mistake on my face. Okay, so I think that we're good on questions on capital projects for now. I would just say that generally speaking, we have talented facility staff, engineering staff, and when we provide them direction on policy and how that impacts taxation, I do have some faith in our staff to bring back a priority list that they believe is the highest priorities within the funding envelope that we've provided them by policy. So I have very similar questions, though, to be fair to all members of council. I remember a discussion of another fire vehicle a year ago, and we talked about passing hand-me-downs around, and that was not seen as a wise move. But then here we are again with another fire vehicle, and also the conversations around the museum. I would just say that my assumption is that we've still got a few years ahead of us before any future changes to the museum, and we do have those things to protect. And if staff are bringing that forward as a priority within that funding envelope, I believe that it is important enough to support. But we can come back around to that and again, and I would just go through to Ms. Anderson to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So now if those projects were okay to be moving on, again, no decision needs to be made tonight. Just wanted to show you where some of those reserves projects will be coming from reserve, and that the balance, there is some money still left in that reserve at the end of next year, assuming that the project will go ahead. So one like this floor scrubber, we are using the amount that is in the budget to purchase it, so there will be no funds left over. But many of the other projects do have some funds that are left over in the reserves. Real property reserve. This is our one that we utilize often. So right now, there's a current balance of just over $1 million. We do have some funds allocated in the current budget for the washroom, as well as some projects for the waterfront that I can continue to carry over. We've committed some of our portion of grant funding and the machine shop one that we just recently applied for. We also have budgeted, this is for the full year of the portion of the salary to come from this budget, as well as the allotment of the projects that that support the waterfront area plan. So if we do all this, we will be overdrawn. I am confident that we can manage it. There's not all these projects in 2019, 2020 that will go ahead. We still don't know all of the awarding of the machine shop. And as I said, this is budgeted for the full year for the waterfront salary. So I just wanted to draw your attention that we have utilized this reserve to its full capacity if everything goes ahead as planned. Gas tax looks a little bit better. So we do have about $1.8 million. If council may recall that we got an additional bump up last year for utilizing from gas tax, and we used it for the generator that is being installed down at Gill Road. So we have committed funds. So we anticipate getting an additional $400,000 next year. And here are the few projects that we are looking at funding, which will then leave a projected balance at the end of next year, just around $468,000. We were committing to utilizing some of this gas tax fund for the Lot 108 project, but since we had put in a grant, we have removed that from the proposed financial plan. And using DCCs, we currently have just 4.4 million. We've committed to use about $1 million for the remainder of 2020. But here are some of the projects that we are looking at funding in 2021 with DCCs. These are the various DCCs, and we still have just over $3.2 million left over. There are some large water projects and some large roads projects that are on the horizon for utilizing DCCs. So it does say $3.2 million, but we will probably be borrowing from other reserves if these large projects that are developer driven go forward. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just, of my presentation, just having council to confirm that this parcel tax for the sewer will remain at the $350 and the parcel tax for the water will remain at $459. And so the next meeting, we'll go through again, going through some of these capital projects and discussing if they are to move forward and selecting the ones for early budget approval. And we will have that discussion regarding the allocation to the asset replacement fund, as well as for taxation amounts as well. And that's it.
Thank you. I do have a question before we move on about the different reserves, the gas tax. I know it's unlikely, in my experience, that all of the allocations from the potential allocations from real property reserve would come through in 2021. But if they did, we would be put in a position where we would either have to cancel one of those projects or allocate additional funding to it. Are any of those projects in that list there? Are any of those eligible for funding, say, from gas tax, for example, or are those portions that kind of are, you know, I know there's restrictions on how real property reserve can be used. There's restrictions on how gas tax can be utilized. Are there any crossovers there that would help balance out a potential overdrawn situation, which, as we know, can't exist? But being put in that position versus having some surplus in gas tax?
Yes, we can actually dip into this reserve because as long as what we're doing is furthering what we will be doing for selling a property. So for example, if there's what property is down at the waterfront that we are preparing for sale, we can dip into this reserve as long as there's other reserves, like you mentioned, gas tax or other surpluses that can cover that off. So that's why I'm not drawing too many alarm bells. I'm just trying to make council aware that we are kind of coming to the end of the balance in the real property reserve without it being replenished. There are other projects, I believe Churchill is on the list of other items that can be sold, and then that will be replenishing this reserve.
Thank you. That was my point, was to clarify that the real property reserve, if utilized in the way that it's proposed to be utilized, can be backed, if you will, by other reserves as security, essentially. I know that's not the right technical term, but the layman's term, and that the sale of other properties like Churchill or other properties will be used to replenish that reserve. So I just wanted to make that understanding known. Is there any other questions from council before we move to the resolutions on the water and sewer? Okay, I'm not seeing any, I don't think. So if we can lower the presentation, do we want to do public input and questions before we move to any resolutions, or do we do the resolutions now on water sewer and then take a bit of a recess for any public questions?
Oh, I would recommend that it's up to you, your worship. The water and sewer were actually discussed at a previous meeting, so their work.
So, the water and sewer recommendations are that direct staff, the council number 1, direct staff to prepare an amendment to the water rates bylaw 1999 number 1298 to increase each consumption rate by 3% effective January 1st, 2021. As we know, that works out to about $3.66 per quarter for the average utilization. Number 2, confirm the sewer rates remain the same. Number 3, direct staff to prepare 2021 sewer parcel tax bylaw at $350, which is the same, and direct staff to prepare the 2021 water parcel tax bylaw at $459, which I also believe is the same as it was in 2020. So that moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Virtanen. Discussion on the motions. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. So now we'll just take a brief recess until about 7:40, if we can all stay close by, just to allow any public questions to come in. While we do that, Ms. Smith, are there any questions presently for council on the budget?
Yes, your worship, there is one question.
Okay, well, I'll take that one and maybe we'll hit 7:40 and give opportunity for others to send their questions in. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is from Catherine Gibbons, and it's regarding page 37. It's on page 37, and she asks, please explain what the $300,000 plan consists of as it relates to the proposed funding source gas tax.
Sorry, I don't have a paper agenda, so can you just point me to where we're talking about in the report?
It sounds like it's regarding the expenditure for stormwater master plan.
Okay, is our Director of Infrastructure available to give us some background on that? I think it's got to do with I&I and stuff, if I remember, but Mr. Goodall.
Yes, so through the chair, the stormwater master plan is something we've done a little bit of work on. But essentially what it does is it looks at the entire town. It breaks the town down into sort of catchment areas. And then what we're determining is what stormwater flows we can anticipate in the catchment areas, both today and then looking forward into, with climate change, what kind of flows we're going to see. And then it looks at our existing sewer system and gets us to the point where we can do upgrades. We have problems in our storm system, particularly in the old section of town, because much of the storm used to be the sanitary lines, and they were converted over. And we do have significant capacity issues. So what we're trying to do is we don't want to just go in and start making replacements of pipes. We want to make sure that we understand the sizes of the pipes we need to do and how we're going to deal with that stormwater. So this $300,000 it's not all going to occur in 1 year, and it's going to sort of be a bit of a phased program, but it's going to look at all of the catchments for the entire town.
And that will prevent things in the long term from like flooding out our sewer treatment plant with stormwater and heavy rain events. Like that'll be obviously further down the road, but that's the kind of asset management we're looking at.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we just have a minute or so. Maybe we'll just take a brief 2 minutes here just to pause and see if there's any more questions that come in. Any more questions so far, Ms. Smith?
No, your worship.
Okay, Well, we'll just take 2 minutes here and give any folks the opportunity. Of course, if they have questions, they can always email them in, and we can refer them or provide answers to those as is appropriate. Just take a brief moment and just another minute or so, and then we'll continue with our agenda. Well, after that brief recess, Ms. Smith, are there any more questions for us on this portion of the budget? We'll wait for Ms. Smith to return.
Sorry about that. There's no further questions.
Okay, all right, we'll move on then. We're moving on to item 9.1 was removed and rescheduled for a future meeting. So that puts us on to item 10.1, official community plan review. And there is a recommended motion here for council, and the recommendation is that council number 1, approve the official community plan steering committee terms of reference attached as appendix A to the report from the Director of Development Services. Number 2, approve the official community plan project charter as attached as appendix B to the report from the Director of Development Services. Number 3, endorse a legal budget of $7,000 and incidentals budget of $10,000 for the official community plan review. And number 4, direct staff to increase the official community plan development budget from $150,000 to $220,000, with $200,000 to come from gas tax, $10,283 to come from OCP reserve, and $9,717 to come from the general government reserves. That's moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Johnson, or question? Or both? Seconded. Okay, thank you. So this was discussed in detail at Committee of the Whole, but I'll go to Councillor Patterson for questions. The motion is on the floor.
Thank you. Just on page, what was 216, the following changes have made to the steering committee terms of reference down to number 6. The committee mandate section is now clearer and simpler. So now I'm confused. A dual mandate has been delineated. What does that mean?
I'll put that through to staff, but it means that there's 2 mandates. One is to provide operational guidance to council to staff and the consultants during the process. And I think the other part, that separate fork, is recommendations to council, but I'll put that through to staff to see if that's right, or if I've confused you further.
No, well, you always do that, but that's okay. I'll hear from staff.
Through the chair, your worship, that's correct.
Thanks.
So basically, there's 2 tasks that are set out for the steering committee, and that is that during the engagement portions, when they're working with staff and the consultants, they'll provide feedback to them, but then they'll make recommendations that where council needs to make decisions to council for that decision-making function. So that's why they're delineated into two sort of roles that they play: advising council or staff and the consultants, and making recommendations to council.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on the motions? Seeing none, I will call. Actually, I do have one question. So when we say the budget from 150 to 220, does that include those two items, the incidentals and the legal, the 220 number? The staff report repeatedly refers to 200,000, and then we're being asked to increase the budget to 220. So I only assumed that it was the 200 plus the incidentals plus the legal plus a little bit of space was a 220 total.
That's correct.
Is that okay? That's correct. Okay. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to item 10.2, UBCM Community to Community Forum. And the recommendation is that council authorize staff to apply to the Union of BC Municipalities for up to $5,000 during the December 2020 application intake for regional community to community forum program to support a community forum with Staminas First Nation Council to be held prior to March 31st, 2021. And number two, that we approve the allocation of up to $5,000 as the town's contribution. Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Patterson. So just for clarity for council and community, these are the ongoing council to council meetings that we have with Staminas First Nation, and UBCM's kind enough to provide grants to cover 50% of those costs. They rarely come into this kind of budget number, but we get the approval and then we have the events and then we submit for 50% of those costs at the conclusion of those events. I think I saw Councillor Johnson with a question.
Yes, under introduction and background, it says in the past we've had dinner meetings between the two councils, etc. In view of COVID, have we made plans as to how that will be realized?
Yeah, and we're not sure yet. I think that the application for the grant and the approval for the budget amount is giving us the opportunity to do that. I have a feeling that, you know, the kind of council to council meetings we've had in the past won't be possible between now and the end of March, but having that application just means if there's an engagement opportunity, we do have 50% funding to do that work. It may be that we have a different kind of engagement, but we'll maybe have to be creative as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Bylaw status sheet is just there for our reference, or there's nothing there, so it's just a placeholder on the agenda. Moving on to correspondence. This is from Ladysmith Friends and Family, and the recommendation is, and this is a consider motion, so we can't just move it. And I do have a little bit of an update. I did make contact with LAF this morning, and the recommendation is that council consider whether it wishes to sponsor the Ladysmith Family and Friends 12 Days of Holiday Cheer fundraiser by sponsoring a specific holiday cheer and or sponsoring the LAF Holiday Cheer crates and or another option identified by council, or receive the correspondence for information. I did find out where their fundraising drive is coming to the end, and I think we recognize that a lot of community groups haven't been able to do their programming. And this year, LAF has, as per the letter that we received, really tried to step up and support families with young children in our community during what will arguably be the most difficult Christmas for many people in their lifetimes. And they've had updates to their fundraising since. So they've knocked off a couple of other things, but they're still looking for a couple of items. One of them was that there's the pancake breakfast. It's $1,500, and it would be really helpful to them if we would commit $1,500 from what funds we may have available, which I'll turn to Ms. Anderson or Ms. McCarrick to comment on. And so that is their greatest need on their list right now is $1,500 for the pancake portion that is detailed there in the letter. So that's just for our information. And now I'll turn to council for questions or a motion. Moved by, Councillor Bertanen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that information, because I was going to bring a motion forward. I know we've given LAF some money from the grants and aid already, but I mean, this is the season, right? And I think I have the numbers right, that there is 6,000 left in the grants and aid, and there's actually some more money due to a grant writing workshop that didn't take place, I think is how I understood it. So I would like to bring a motion that we donate $1,500 from the grants and aid budget to the, do I have to say the pancake breakfast, or do I just say to LAF?
Just LAF, yeah.
Okay, to LAF then.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the motion? A few seconders. I'll take, wrong seat, Councillor Jacobson. Is there any further discussion on that? Councillor Patterson.
I would like to see it say that we will sponsor the breakfast, so we know that is explicitly where the funds are going to go.
Okay, so you're moving an amendment that says for the pancake breakfast?
Well, I thought maybe Jeff said that, but you just didn't hear him.
Well, I kind of cut him off and said it wasn't necessary, but if it makes you more comfortable, that's amendment moved by Councillor Patterson.
Okay.
Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Any discussion on the amendment? And seeing none, call the question. Could I call the question on the amendment? All those in favor? Any opposed? I'm not going to oppose it. Now on the motion as amended, $1,500 for LAF for the pancake breakfast portion of their programming for this Christmas. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you for that. Now we're moving on to our late item. Look at that, Ms. Smith. I didn't forget and barrel on by. This is the COVID-19 Parks, Recreation, and Culture. My screen here. Program rate adjustments. So I would put that through to staff, because I don't have a document or a motion here. So
sure. Thank you, Your Worship. So we have a late item that staff have brought to our attention. You know, that council understands that the community is struggling through COVID, and when we did open up the facility, consideration was to be financially responsible and try and make up for the groups that we now couldn't admit so many people into the pool at once. So we had to do that in sort of cohorts or into smaller groups. So we did approve that the admissions would be at $6.50 as part of a little bit of a cost recovery if we could. And now staff have looked at it again and would like to bring forward that we, for those drop-in rates, go to the bylaw as stated in the bylaw. So to go back to what they were pre-COVID, and also to allow us to use some of the grant recovery money that the province has provided through the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant to offset the revenues that would be lost.
thank you. So that would be a motion required to, do I have just a clean motion that I can bring forward?
Donna, could you read that motion?
Thank you.
Your Worship, the recommended or the proposed recommendation is maybe I'm just going to mute somebody's.
Councillor Stevens' saxophone. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, that council, number one, authorize staff to resume offering parks, recreation, and culture services using the established admission fees and passes according to Town of Ladysmith Community Center and Facilities Fees and Charges Bylaw 2018, number 1968. And number two, offset revenue shortfalls by authorizing the use of funds received through the provincial COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant for local governments.
Thank you. So is that moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Johnson? I want to give a shout out to Councillor Johnson because he actually flagged this. So I know staff did bring this forward, and thank you to staff for being so responsive, but it was Councillor Johnson, I think, that kind of flagged this. And And although we still have a report to come forward on how we can use the majority of the COVID restart funding, this is the kind of thing that funding was really intended for, was to not put the burden of the extra costs onto our community members, but to help support some of these revenue shortfalls that we're going to have, just as the necessity of COVID dictates, but without putting that burden on people unnecessarily. So I really appreciate staff bringing that forward. And I do look forward to a more fulsome discussion on what we can do to support our community and keep our finances in good shape with the COVID grant from the province as we go through the budget. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Stevens, and then Mackay.
Thank you. Just in terms of the unpredictability of the coming year, do we need to put any kind of cap on point 2 of the resolutions?
I wouldn't think so, but I would put that through to staff. We could look at all of our fees through the year. I think we're talking about, you know, the projected losses in Parks and Rec were in the few $100,000, but that was all programs, all the canceled classes and things like that. I don't know if staff has a number on that, but
Our Parks and Rec Director, Chris Barfoot, is going to bring a more fulsome report on what we anticipate that lost recovery will be at the December 1st meeting.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just remark that my experience has actually been that the balance between cost recovery and actually getting people not to come can actually lead to lower revenue. So if $6 and change is just too high for people, you might end up losing 80% of your revenues. Whereas keeping it the same, you'll get 40%. You know what I'm saying? Like if you make it so unaffordable to people, they don't come anymore, well, you're going to actually have a greater revenue shortfall while also taking services away from folks. So, Councillor Mackay.
I just want to speak in favor of the motion because I think it's a perfect way to be putting some of these grant funds to use. And Parks and Rec is a great place for people to be spending some COVID time. So I really want to be able to encourage it. So very much in favor. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Johnson, for pointing it out.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you for that. Now, for the second time in my career as mayor, we have a reconsideration before us. So I'll read out the description just for those who may be following along at home. In accordance with section 131 of the community charter, the mayor may require council reconsideration of a matter and to vote again on a matter that was subject of a vote. The mayor may initiate a reconsideration either at the same council meeting as the vote took place or within 30 days following that meeting. Therefore, I request reconsideration of resolution number CS 2020-322 defeated at the November 3rd, 2020 regular council meeting as follows: that council award the contract for the Holland Creek Supply Main Phase 2 to Dawn Demand Excavating for $288,298. And I think that's where we have to go first. I may need some guidance from staff in terms of the procedural part of doing this.
So, Your Worship, the first part would be that council, that you move to make a motion to reconsider that resolution.
So
and then
council,
if that is passed, then it's on, the original motion is on the floor again.
thank you. So the motion then is that council reconsider resolution number CS 2020-322 regarding Holland Creek Supply Main Phase 2 tender award. And I would move that, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Discussion on the motion. I think we'll get into discussion as soon as we get to the next part. All those in favor? And any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. So now this takes us, I believe, to the 14.1 Holland Creek Supply Main.
No,
Okay, sorry.
now,
So the original motion is on the floor. So then now it's on the floor. So we can discuss the original motion. I will note that 14.1.1 is actually a follow-up motion then, is that correct? Okay, so there'll be more clarity coming from the follow-up motion, I believe, that just highlights the discrepancy in the timelines. So I don't know if we need to rediscuss this motion again that's now back on the floor from our last meeting, but I'll open this one up for discussion. Okay, seeing, oh, None, I was going to say, but Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, you're still muted. You're muted. There you go.
The part about the 3 days, will that be in the next motion?
That's the next motion, yeah.
I stand down.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Now that'll take us down to 14.1.1. And this is that council directs staff to include in the contract with Don Demand Excavating a construction period of 45 days, plus up to 3 days in the spring to complete final preparations and paving for the Holling Creek Supply Main Phase 2. Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any discussion? Councillor Johnson.
Through to staff, the 45 days plus 3 days in the spring to complete the final preparations of paving. Is there a possibility that the people who are in that area could be going weeks or months with an open ditch not paved, or?
No. In the staff report, it indicates that in the interim time, those trenches would be covered and cold patched. So they would be, I believe, Mr. Goodall, they would be asphalted, but not with the proper permanent finish.
Through the chair. Oh, Jesus. Through the chair, that's, yeah, through the chair, that's correct. It would be, it's a cold patch material. So it's just like asphalt, but it's not a hot mix. Yes.
No, I didn't want people bumping their cars over an open culvert.
Yeah, no, that won't be the case. And just to be clear, and to those in the community that may be interested in it, it's because you do paving in this kind of time frame, you're going to end up with a terrible result, and the paving window opens up again in the spring where you can get a good finish, and that's the intention, I believe, of the proponent.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. So I believe that takes us down to question period. Are there any questions, Ms. Smith?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. So thank you all for actually quite an efficient night, considering we had quite a bit of work to do today, and I appreciate all your good humor and letting me defy my own instructions sometimes and putting up with my terrible Movember mustache. So have a great night, and we'll see you all very soon.
Your Worship, can you stay on for a minute?
Sure.